Cyber Reapers. Hello. Alright. I hope you are doing really well right now, day or night or whenever it is. It's good to be here. I'm just in a very kind of chill sort of mood right now, so I hope I can help you also be kind of chill too, you know. But today I'd like to introduce and maybe kind of gush about a book that I recently read. And see, oh, I set it to my other side. I surprised myself, so let's see. I have a little stack of books here because I wasn't sure which I wanted to do just yet. Yeah. So, if you are new, you might not know my book tastes just yet. Don't worry though, I blab a lot about books I like, so you'll probably, if you hear a few of my videos, you'll probably get a pretty good idea of what I like. But my taste is it can be rather diverse when it comes to fictional reading. Not super diverse, I'll admit that. Because I think generally I go more towards science fiction and horror and thriller. But there's so many great fantasy books that I see advertised as well that I end up going into fantasy as well, even though that's honestly not my genre so much. Not like the fantasy that's more like castles and royalty and stuff, and I mean that's awesome and it's wonderful if you love that. Personally, I like it too. Sci-fi is more my thing, so that's where I tend to be the most. And historicals, I very much like reading historical fiction as well. When I pick it up, it's just sometimes I have a hard time convincing myself to, because I like dreaming more of the future than of the past. But I found some really good books in that genre as well. And of course, romance is pretty fun as well. I'm not more so one for straight cis romance, if I'm being honest, just because I think the industry's a little oversaturated with that. But I love myself a queer romance. I love non-binary, trans leads, and just give me all the queer books. And if you blend queer and sci-fi, I will forever, hold on, there we go, forever love that. I'm trying to be careful not to make too much noise. It is a little new, this whole setup. But yeah, speaking of queer and sci-fi, I've got a book. The main part is the sci-fi, not the romance, but the romance has such a strong tension to it, and of course it's queer, so I have to mention that, just because it's so great. And this book is, I read it in the span of 24 hours. I think I started with about the first half or so of the book during the day, and then I took a break to do other things during the day, and then started up again at night, and ended up reading until I think 4 in the morning or so. I want to say that's about right. But yeah, I really loved this book. It's The Space Between Worlds, and it's Micaiah Johnson. I really hope I'm saying that right. I actually really should have researched their name first, I believe. Let me check also on their pronouns. Let's see, was raised she. Okay, so I see she, so I'm going with she, her for pronouns. But yeah, she crafted a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful novel, I think. And it's essentially, it's a multiverse kind of novel, so before you run away if you haven't read a lot of multiverse books. I haven't read a lot of multiverse books either. But I understand if maybe there's a lot of multiverse media out there right now that's, some of it's kind of like, it seems like you're kind of using it as a cop-out to like bring back certain actors in certain movies, or to like negate what happened to a character or a certain plot by bringing in this other one, and it just, so I kind of understand why some people might be a little off-put by the idea of multiverse at this point, because I also think the industry might be a little bit, not quite oversaturated yet, but like, I think there's a lot of multiverse out there that might be a little much. Now there are some really wonderful examples though. I think pretty much almost anybody will agree that the Spider-Verse movies are a really good example of using the multiverse as a tool, as part of the plot being so interwoven with what the story is, and using it to describe and showcase characters and their arcs in such a way that like the story just is not, it would not be told without it, in a way that it would be really hard to tell that kind of story without that tool of the multiverse. And same goes for this book, I think, because it utilizes the multiverse not as just a like cool aspect that is there, but also as a way of showing, of really bolstering the difference between characters, and also showing just how convoluted people are, and how complex, and how one path could, or just one character's path could completely diverge from another's, and their lives just turned out so different, based on like one little decision. And it's I think a really good use of multiverse aspects. And the plot itself is very much based in it being part of a job, actually. So the main character, okay, I also haven't looked up if it's Kara or Kara, but Cara is how it's listed on there. But yeah, and that's her on the cover, I believe. But I'm gonna go with Kara. Wait, no, Kara. I don't know. We're gonna see. We'll see which one I go with. I'm so sorry. I don't have a lot of people to talk about novels with, so I don't actually learn what the names are out loud. And that is why I put a pronunciation guide in my books, because I've heard that's a thing that people want for characters. But I digress. So Kara or Kara is a person who is, her job is to go between universes to gather data on other universes and bring it back to Earth Zero, which is where she is from. And she works in this big fancy company in this big fancy city, Wiley City. And she is not from Wiley City, but just outside of it. And the conditions are so different between the city and outside of it, where Kara is from. And the conditions it's just so very different. There's better access to food. The Wiley City residents take care of each other, really good health care, like very low amount of crime, or at least, stuff that's not white collar crime, the fancy crime or whatever. It's, safe in general there. While on the other hand, where Kara's from, it's very not safe, and it's got much less easy access to food, and you have to have a certain amount of grit and determination to survive and interact with the people there. And of course, there are different parts of that area too. Her family is from a more religious part where they're kind of a community that's more based in, like, they are obligated to help other people and to give sanctuary to other people. So there's different aspects of both places, and it's really nuanced. The society, the setting, really nuanced, especially for like this amount of writing about it. And of course the characters reflect that, so there's characters that are shown from all the different types of areas of both places, and also from outside, like well outside the city, like places from all over the world. And not just that, but all of this in different universes as well. So you get to experience the city and, like, Ashtown, I think, is what the area outside Wiley City is called, and I'm referencing both places on the cover because they actually are on the cover. This side being the Wiley City one, and this one being more the Ashtown one. And yeah, I love just how nuanced, and just the setting just lives and breathes. I believe it. I believe that this place exists. That kind of a feeling. And it's the way that its history is also really well described, because you get to connect the pieces of it through different universes that Kara visits. And it's her job isn't actually really to know much about that, but she picks up on it based on her interactions with the other universes. And largely the people who are working those jobs, going to other universes to collect data for the big, Wiley City place, the company where interdimensional travel and all that, that's their thing. They gather data on it. The main character isn't really supposed to interact a lot with the other universes, and generally she doesn't, but she came from kind of, without spoiling anything, a rough background, to where she has convoluted relationships with a few people, and it including the person who she fancies, like she very outwardly flirts with, a person she works with who is, like, from Wiley City, so from the big fancy place, and that is Dell, who is represented here. And like, Kara very much cares for Dell and likes Dell, but there's tension between them, and assumptions and things that are kind of spoiler heavy, but in such a way there's definitely a lot of interesting nuance in their relationship in Earth Zero. But also Kara visits other Dells on other Earths as well, which adds a little bit more convolutedness to it as well. And not just, there's Dell from Wiley City, but also Kara's sister, sibling figure, Esther, who is one of the people from the sort of religious-y area in Ashtown. And there's also someone who's kind of a, how do I describe? Well, his name is Nick, or at least that's how he's addressed. he's got a longer name that's not said as often. But I think he's referred to as the Emperor of the Ashtown area, and he is a very violent person who, like, Kara was in a relationship with an abusive one, and I think this book really it dives deep into a lot of tough topics, and I think the abusive relationship aspect is very, I think it does it really well of showing through the main character how a person will do a lot to survive, and part of that is, how they navigate relationships with people, how a person does that. And so the showing Nick, the one she was in a relationship with, in different universes, there's a lot of consistency among the different universes because they can only travel to ones that are close enough in nature to them. But like showing characters, like I really don't like, if I met Nick, of course, I really wouldn't like him as a person, but reading about him, I think he's a strong character. And then when you see how some things affected how he came to be or who he is, it definitely, like, the book definitely isn't cheering for Nick or whatever, but it's just the book brings about showing how there's so much nuance to people and who they are and how they came to be, or how they came to behave the way they do. And yeah, so it actually makes it a little hard for me to completely hate Nick or the idea of him, because there is potential for him to be different, and not in a way of, like, the book is saying, oh, well, if you just redeem, or if you just stick with someone who's mistreating you, you'll be able to fix them. Like, not that kind of a style of they could be different, but more of the world being as cruel as it is affects people quite a bit, and so different environmental factors can make people better, or can change people in a lot of ways. But yeah, the book covers a lot of heavy topics, and there's a lot of the main character having so much grit and adaptability and just like this need to survive, especially because it's just, she had such a hard life herself, but not just herself, but all of herselves. A little tidbit that I haven't mentioned yet about the interdimensional travel is that only people who, sorry, I should clarify, you can only visit a universe where the doppelganger version of you, or the version of you that's there, has already died. If you go to a universe where the version of you there is still alive, you'll basically just kind of destroy yourself and die if you do that. So you have to, in order to explore those other worlds, the big Wily City company that wants to explore the other universes basically found a few people who they die in a lot of universes, and that's Kara. She dies in so many universes that, or at least of the nearby ones, I think they can visit about like 300 other worlds or so, or maybe a little less than that, around that amount, but they can visit about 300 worlds, and Kara has died in most of them. I think, if I remember right, one of the times of the book, I remember it was less than 10 of her left, all throughout those 300 worlds or universes. So Kara dies a lot because of the environmental factors that she grew up in. And this one managed to survive, so that's why she's working there at the Wiley City place that's recruiting these people and giving them jobs to go to those other places. But Wiley City, that's really where Kara wants to get a residency, to be able to stay there. Right now, she's still technically an Ashtown resident, but she wants to be able to go and stay in Wiley City where the conditions are safer. But unfortunately, as technology gets better, her job is at risk because soon robots will be able to do essentially what she does, is going to the other universes and picking up data. It'll be less risk to the people who are going there, and it also means the fancy scientisty people don't have to rely on other people to get to their work done. Another aspect of the whole you can't go to other universes where you've died in aspect is most of the fancy rich scientisty people who are part of like the better roles or the better positions in the sciencey institution that Kara works at. Most of those people can't go to other universes because they've lived or they tend to live in such safe conditions that they don't die early on. So they can't do the work that Kara does, and they need her for that. But if they can get technology to do it, then she's out of a job, and so she's trying to essentially fight to be able to have a job at the same institute, and she has kind of a mentor figure who is trying to help her out to get to a higher position where she can actually stay. But yeah, the whole book is very interesting. The plot, I don't think I'll really talk a whole lot about the plot because you really do have to read it. There are reveals every few chapters that just like change the entire context of everything you read prior to it, and it was amazing because sometimes I've kind of been let down by reveals being like a little too expected or just not quite just didn't quite hit, but it was impressive, especially with the amount of reveals that were in this book, that every single one of them hit for me. Like, I was going, oh wow, okay, this makes sense, oh, this makes sense. So I was really pleased reading it, because with that reveal every few chapters of something new information that put into context everything before, I was just following along and going, yeah, okay, this makes sense, I am following, this is great. So yeah, that's why I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the plot, because you really do, the premise is probably the main part I can describe. Beyond that is kind of requires context from the stuff that is like the revealed stuff. But I'll say though that Kara travels to different worlds while trying to essentially keep her position in Wiley City, or secure a future in Wiley City, really. And also sort of just learning more about people around her in particular, as well as how the city functions and was built and all of that, while traveling to different universes. also dealing with some issues in like Earth Zero with her family and her relationship with Dell. And yeah, just there's a lot. There's a lot to it. I love gushing about this book I found. Because yeah, I only recently read it, but it's great. I found it actually at a bookstore. I'm trying to remember which one. Oh, maybe it's on here. Oh, I found it at Powell's. No way. Oh, that's 2024, February 2024. I found this several months ago, almost a year ago actually, and I haven't read it till now. Well, but yeah, I got this at Powell's up in Portland, Oregon. Can't believe I forgot I got this from Powell's, but yeah, I remember Powell's has a lot of good, their employees do little, I mean, I found quite a few bookstores do this now, but I found this book specifically because an employee put a little, not a sticky note, but like, you know, a little note next to the book on the shelf. And the note, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it described it as like it was a sci-fi with like queer elements and a lot of tension. And I remember seeing that note and going, "Oh, cool, yeah. I mean, that sounds great." So I don't know what that noise was. It might have been my cat. I don't know. My cat is just kind of sleeping over there, so he might have made a goofy little noise. But yeah, the note though is what compelled me to buy the book, because I just kind of didn't know what to go with at the moment, and so I ended up choosing this one. As I think I got 2 books during that visit, because I remember there was a Powell's visit in February that I got 2 books, and this was one of them. But yeah, so I'm really glad for that little recommendation tag thing, and I'm hoping that maybe these videos can kind of serve as like recommendation tags too, because I'm not ever gonna do, I mean, I guess I won't completely say I won't ever do something, but, well, I'll provide context a little more on that. I don't ever plan on showing a book that I don't like, is the thing. I don't do bad reviews of things. If a book just didn't vibe with me, then I just don't review it, and I don't talk about it, you know, because I don't want to put authors down on stuff that is a difference of opinion, you know, because like if it's a thing of just, I was going like, I didn't really feel like, I mean, maybe I thought the characters were flat or something, or I didn't like the ending as much. Like if that's the case, then I'm not gonna review the book, and I know maybe that's possibly controversial in some way or another, but I just don't think that I don't find a use for those reviews for any book I read. You know, I just like I find use for the reviews that are you know, the 4 or 5 star reviews that are you know, that talk about what the specific things you love about a book. So those are the reviews I give. The only like reviews that I think are like, you know, 1 star or whatever reviews that I might ever think to give are if the author was clearly writing some really, really hateful kind of stuff toward a particular group of people. But if they do that, I don't think I would ever choose to pick up their book willingly if I knew about that beforehand, and usually I do at least like a light little bit of research on whatever book I'm reading, or whatever book I choose to read or to go into reading. So my main point is, if I show a book on here in this channel, it means I liked it, you know. I'm not gonna diss authors for writing books that I don't vibe with, because I just don't see the point in that. If I didn't vibe with a book, then I didn't vibe with a book, and that's that's fine. I'm here to promote like the actual like positive experiences I've had with books, in hopes of like, you know, letting other people know like, hey, I had a positive experience with this book and here's why, and hopefully you can kind of glean some information from that, and see if you want to read the book, or even if you just want to go support the author or somebody. I'll also have like books on here that are like indie published, and I also try to particularly look for marginalized voices as well, and I mean, just because it's not as often that they are held up as in high esteem in comparison to non-marginalized voices, so I just want to provide my input of a voice of like just helping boost the book a little more, whenever I do a book video like this. So yeah, and also in general, I just really want to be positive and provide a positive space, because that's kind of what I think of with the ASMR community, and with a lot of the bookish community. Although I think there are some people around who just want to stir up some drama in the book community, but I don't see that as much in the ASMR community from what I've seen. So I'm hoping that this space can be a nice combination of the two, where we can just kind of, you know, vibe and talk about books and what we enjoyed about them, or if they sound interesting or something, you know. And yeah, I don't know. Does the pages turning sound interesting? I like the sound of pages turning. I'm noticing this because the story's divided into parts. They say like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. I think there's 4 parts. And at the beginning of the chapter that opens each part, it'll describe like a part of like an aspect of the multiverse, and then it'll say like a line of responses from like the scientists, and then a line of response from the spiritual. This book definitely covers of a lot of like what, like the science versus the spiritual, and me being, I'm an atheist, I don't really believe in a particular, like, I don't believe in any aspect of the universe being really like I don't believe in a particular god or an afterlife or anything like that. I know for somebody who writes about an afterlife, that seems maybe a little weird, but I do really like exploring spirituality though, and different religious characters, because it really provides insight on the idea of faith and belief, and what people want and need out of religion. Like, what is it exactly? The community aspect, the support, the idea of just like the reassurance of the unknown being more familiar than you think it is, just all of that. So I really like writing and reading about characters that bring to light different aspects of belief, and in particular exploring like religious belief in science fiction. Also, yeah, that is my cat snoring. I don't know if the mic picked it up that time. I just realized that is my cat. I don't think he's doing it all that often. I don't know, maybe he is. Maybe I'll figure that out later. Alright, I was talking about religion and belief, wasn't I? And then my cat snored, so... Which is a little funny, because his name is Loki. Named after, specifically, the Norse god of mischief. And no, I didn't name him after the god because of Loki from Marvel. I do like Loki from Marvel, the character, but the idea for his name actually came before... Or the idea for my cat's name kind of came before Marvel really brought Loki into like the MCU universe, I think. So that would have been a while back. Well, actually, no, it wouldn't have been before, but it would have been before like Avengers, the first movie at least. So wasn't super deep into the Loki character's popularity. But yeah, I'm talking about religion. Well, there's a cat sitting next to me named after a god. I thought it was a fitting name, though, considering he's a cat. He's mischievous. And now he is snoring, because he wants his voice in my video, apparently. I hope you don't mind that. You can just pretend there is a cat sitting on the blanket nearby you, who is just, just lying there, snoring, while I talk about books. Yeah, I hope you don't mind generally the background sounds, because I'm recording in a house that's, I'm not alone in living here. And so finding a time to record something like this, it really is, I do have to wait till nighttime, when other people are asleep and I am not. So I hope you don't mind the potential background sounds, but I did try to reduce it as much as I can by, doing this at a time when I'm pretty much the only one awake. Which means you get to hear a cat snoring in the background, I suppose. But yeah. So this book does involve religion. It also involves... Do I have to... Alright, I won't talk about it in detail, I guess. I don't know if I need to give anything about content. But it involves sex workers as well. And just kind of... If you've ever seen Firefly, the sort of westerny sci-fi TV show, it brings up this idea that I actually really like in fiction, where like sex workers are highly respected members of the community because the work they do is very influential, and I just really like that idea, especially in comparison to how modern day society is just so rude, so rude to them. And so this book brings in, the idea of that as well, of sex workers being in a respectable position. And actually, like, I'd say almost as powerful, or maybe even more powerful than the group that's, how did I describe them earlier? The group in Ashtown that is, that kind of runs things. Nick's the emperor of them in Earth Zero, but it's, essentially they're not exactly, like, they're not doing illegal work, I don't think, or maybe they are, but they say the sex working house, the group, is pretty much on par with the violent group that runs things. They're just as powerful and influential. So I like that idea in fiction as well. I mean, I like that idea in actuality as well, because it just makes more sense, I think, for them to be viewed as powerful people instead of whatever, this weird, twisted, like, disgusted almost sort of feeling that most people direct towards sex workers right now. So yeah, and to be clear, I'm asexual. I have no interest in sex. And I also actually don't really have any interest in reading about sex either. But I do like talking about different dynamics of social positions, and I'm very much sex positive and very much like, yes, let's talk about it. And I want especially teenagers to be informed about what it is, what it means, consent, how to stay as safe as you can, because so much of, especially American society, I mean, that's what I'm used to. I'm an American, specifically Texan. So most of what I'm used to is people not talking about it and keeping it, like trying to keep it a secret from teenagers, which is not the way to do things in order to keep them safe, or safer. Anyway, so that's kind of why I'm bringing this up as like a point. Another point to this book is being like, yes, I like to see that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm trying to think, is there another aspect to this book that I didn't cover yet that I really wanted to discuss? Oh, I think overall, to describe this without giving anything away, I think this book is written cleverly, particularly the plot. There are some aspects that I feel like I could easily see the book going in one direction, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But then the characters point something out about the current situation they're in, and it just elevates the plot just even more for the characters to be smart and just like have just like that extra bit of a thought behind their actions. Specifically, like there's a part where a character wants to get revenge on another character, and what they really like, their gut is telling them that they want to kill the person to get revenge on them. But they put aside that for a little bit to think about it more and realize that it would be worse off for society and for the people they care about to go about that route. So instead they do something different in order to try to get revenge. I'll let you read it to see if they do, But like, that's kind of part of my point of there's just like an extra step beyond what I expect the plot to do. And that's just, I really appreciate that. Yeah, let's see, is there anything else? Because, oh, the two worlds, of course, I can't believe I didn't touch on this yet because of it staring me kind of in the face. But not only is there like traveling to different universes, of course, Kara's gonna feel kind of disjointed with reality, like out of place, of like not sure where she belongs, kind of a feeling. But it's not just about her belonging to a specific world, but also to a specific like place in that world of like, is she more Ashtown or is she more Wiley City, does parts of her culture that, or her town's history that she wants to reject, like the violent, especially the history, the violent history with it. How much of that, of her clothes and of the way she speaks, like how much of that does she bring to Wiley City while she's trying to assimilate there? And then also while she's living in Wiley City but visiting Ashtown, how much of Wiley City does she bring there? Like does she want to stand out as somebody who's more Wiley City, who is more highly regarded in Wiley City, but outside of it, she becomes an outsider. And then that conflict kind of brings in sort of a displacement where she doesn't really know where she belongs. And it's kind of the space between. So the aspect of the space between worlds being not just the worlds of hopping to different places, but also the two lives that she kind of lives, the life where her family is versus like where her job is. And I very, very, very much, this very much speaks to me in my experience in the past 4 years, because now I live in Houston, and I went to school in Portland. So to clarify, Houston, Texas, Portland, Oregon. I'm probably doing this reverse. The idea being, on the map, you'll see it's upper west coast for Portland, Oregon, and then Houston, Texas is, south. So if you're looking at a map of the United States, it's pretty far apart. It's a 5 to 10 day drive, depending on how dedicated you are, or a 4.5 hour flight, I think, if I remember right. I don't know, I did the flight like a lot of times, so I should know by now, but I really resonate with this idea of the two different places, though, because, if you're watching this from, the United States, or you're familiar enough with, the idea of Texas, Houston's very different than the rest of Texas, I will say, but the neighborhood I'm in is very, I don't know how much of Texas you're imagining, or what you're imagining of Texas, but it's, I could compare it to Ashtown, of kind of, some of the people there are a little, I'll stop there. So I very much, there's a lot of aspects to Houston that I really like, actually, because it's one of the more diverse cities in Texas, if I remember right. So I got to go to school with a lot of different people, and I ended up finding people who were really, my kind of people. I found queer people, I found just, people who I felt comfortable being openly, like, non-binary around, and I'm still friends with, and in contact with, like, a decent amount in comparison to, like, who I thought, I might not be in contact with. To clarify, during high school, I was not openly out as non-binary, or DID, or, someone with DID. But yeah, it's, so there are aspects of Houston I like, such as, like, some of the people I've met, and I really like the weather. I might be, like, the only person who likes the weather, but I love the heavy rain. I got to Portland expecting a lot of rain, because everybody tells me, oh, it's a lot of rain, it's rain all the time. It's like a drizzle. In Portland, there's just, like, you stick your hand out and it's like mist in comparison to Houston rain. Houston rain is a downpour. Pretty much almost any rain you get in Houston is rain. And so I was kind of a little disappointed it wasn't rain in Portland, but that's okay. It was still nice to have a little damp mist every so often. But yeah, there's a lot of rain in Houston, and there's also a lot of sun and a lot of heat. And funnily enough, Portland also has heat. It has heat waves in the summer. the rest of the year it's a little too cold for me, but it has heat waves in the summer, and yet they don't have air conditioning as a norm in homes there that at least of all the homes that I came across, including like some of the ones I lived in during my time there. And I thought that was insane because it got as hot as Houston. Maybe like it was more of a dry heat than a humid heat. Like Houston is humid, but they still didn't have air conditioning. Unlike Houston has air conditioning. As like a norm, it is everywhere, and people use it actually more than I feel comfortable with. Like I actually like having more of the warmth than the blasting cool air. So yeah, so I really like the weather aspects. And if I had to pick a natural disaster to learn to live with, hurricanes and floods are probably, I'm more comfortable with that than earthquakes and wildfires, which is what you get in Portland. Not so much the earthquakes in my experience, but definitely the wildfire was, that was an interesting time. It didn't get as far up as like to where we needed to evacuate, but the sky looked apocalyptic. It was quite something. But yeah. Alright, maybe I'll list one more thing for like a comparison. The food. I really like the Tex-Mex here in Houston. And I've got a Hispanic family. I know I don't look how you might imagine as Mexican, but I am of Mexican descent. My grandmother specifically, like, you look at her and you go, oh yes, okay, I recognize Mexican now. So like, and I have a big Latinx family. They're wonderful. But yeah, they, anytime I have like food at their house, there's a lot of food, and it's good. And also even just going to restaurants here, they have good, comfy food, and you cannot find Tex-Mex in Portland, Oregon. You can hardly find any places actually that are, like, I don't know, what do you call Tex-Mex in Portland? Like, I don't imagine it's Mexican food there either, but maybe they just call it Mexican food, even if it's like Tex-Mex maybe and isn't really Mexican food. Anyway, my point though is that like you can't really find that in Portland. You also can't find a Whataburger in Portland, which, speaking as a vegetarian, shouldn't mean that much to me, but it does, because Whataburger is the place that, as a teenager, if your friend has a car, you will, or at least in my experience, back in high school, your friend has a car, you will stop off at Whataburger after doing a thing, and then you'll go wander around a dollar store, or wander around the mall and not buy anything. Like, that's my experience as a teenager. Whataburger is a cultural thing as part of my life, more than an actual, like, place I go to eat. I mean, I do go to eat there, but if I go to eat there, I'll get either a salad or onion rings, fries. Oh, their grilled cheese is actually really good when you, on the app. Some people might think this is insane, but as a vegetarian person, I'm really quite thankful on the app. I don't know if they offer it in person because I've been too scared to ask, but they have like options. You can add like lettuce, pickles, tomato, and grilled onions. You can add that stuff on there to the Whataburger grilled cheese. And so I do it, and it's actually very good. I love it. Or at least I think it's very good. I don't know if you like stuff on your grilled cheese beyond the cheese, but if you do, I would recommend trying it. And if you're anywhere near a Whataburger, which I think you pretty much do have to be in Texas, there might be one in like Oklahoma. I don't remember how far up it goes. But yeah, they don't have that in Portland though. In fact, actually, Portland is pretty, you can find chains there, but they're very much, they like their indie coffee shops and stuff like that, and I absolutely love that. I love that about Portland. But there is like something just a little bit missing in me when there's not like a single Whataburger around, or as much Tex-Mex. And pretty much everything else, though, in terms of food, is actually pretty similar. Believe it or not, at least in my experience of the two areas that I was in, like the area in Portland and the area in Houston. There's a lot of Asian fusion places in both, and so that's pretty great. And I can generally find like a pretty widespread amount of things. Like there's some Southeast Asian restaurants I think I found in both places. There's Indian restaurants, really great curry as a vegetarian. I mean, I'm very much diving into Indian food and trying to up my spice tolerance so that I can eat more at Indian food places. And what else? Oh, there's like African food places. Peri Peri is a place. Wait, no, not Peri Peri, the place. Sorry, that's the spice I recently got because I went to Nando's, which I think is a chain, but it's my South African family member, cousin, I think technically we might be, I don't know what you call the cousin of my father, but yeah, she's South African and she really likes Nando's, so that's how I got introduced to that place. But yeah, there's a lot of different types of food that you can find in both Portland and Houston, so I'm really happy about that. And in Portland in particular, though, I will say I miss this about Portland, they're a lot more open to vegetarian and vegan options, to where you'll pretty much find like 2 or 3 really good vegetarian and vegan options on menus anywhere you go in Portland, in my experience. Houston, not so much. Usually in Houston, they've started getting a little more open to it, but most of the time, if you go to a place, like say if you go to a burger place in Portland, there will be like veggie burgers and stuff. You won't really find that in Houston as much, not in as many places. What else? But yeah, I guess it's like I definitely saw the difference in food and climate and the people. Also, just like the walkability is a lot more. People in Portland are a lot more used to public transit and walking and biking. Houston, you really do have to drive if you want to get anywhere. There's not really a lot of options. I walked to school back in high school, but when I say I walked to school, I mean I walked, an hour to get to school, and then I walked an hour back. And that wasn't, I mean, I could have driven, but it's what should have been a 5-minute drive from like my house to the high school. Ended up like being like 20 minutes in the mornings because of how stacked up the cars would be, because they don't have a really good parking lot system to be able to fluidly get traffic to work. So I just walked, and I was like, I'm not wasting the emissions on that. But yeah, walked to and from school. And the from school is actually how I got to know my best friend, so I'm very thankful that I chose to walk. So, but yeah, but in Portland though, like people are used to walking places. Places are like generally a lot closer together to be able to find what you need. Like the grocery store was like a 10-minute walk from the place I lived in my senior year. Like that was really nice. And the school itself during my senior year was also about a 10-minute walk away, at least from 2 edges of the campus, so the walkability was quite nice, and also just using the public transport, the buses were really, really nice. But yeah, the spaces are just so different, and of course the culture is very different. Portland is a lot more open to indie anything, like indie authors, indie startups, like I said, coffee shops, restaurants. People trust food carts there, like it's more of a universally trusted thing from what I've seen. Also, people are just slightly more, in general, more empathetic from what I've come across. Especially when it comes to people experiencing homelessness. Like, people in Houston, especially my area of Houston, just try to ignore people needing, basic human rights, such as, being able to survive, and just any of the things that you need for that, like food and shelter. And there's just like this kind of attitude in, I don't know if it's just a Houston as much as maybe a Texas or South kind of ish thing, or if it's just some people in my area, but there seems to be a looking down on people in poverty kind of a thing, which is really, just, I don't like that behavior, how people are just, for whatever reason, there are some people out there who think that if you just work hard enough, you will not be in poverty, which means if you are in poverty, you are not working hard enough, which is very much not true. Very, very much not true. And that attitude is less there from what I've seen of people in Portland, although I have met a few that were kind of weird cases, but anyway, it's, in general, I feel like Portland, the environment, I felt a little safer there. As someone who's like more femme-presenting, non-binary, I felt safe telling people my pronouns there. I do not feel safe telling my pronouns here to strangers in Houston, I should clarify. Yeah, this was a really long-winded discussion about me. I hope you don't mind that this really is like I'm just kind of rambling, kind of a discussion while loosely keeping to the book. But the idea, the reason I went on about all of this is that Portland and Houston both have a tug on me, especially because like my family is in Houston. There are good people in Houston who I know and love and adore. Like my family and friends, there are people in Houston who like I just have deep ties to. And I have deep ties to the college I went to, Reed College in Portland, as well as the friends I made there. Part of the weirdness feeling of this is like my memories are tied to the places, and of course there's aspects that don't change as easily, like the food and the climate and the people in general. But it's also kind of a weird understanding that I have that what I miss the most is the people, or specifically the people I'm close to, I miss the most. The ones who I'm connected to. But in acknowledging that, I realize that actually most of the people who I feel connected to in those places, a lot of them are kind of not in those places anymore. Like in Houston, I had friends in high school who I didn't get to say goodbye to. When I graduated in spring 2020. Yeah. So I didn't get to actually give them a proper goodbye kind of a thing. I had gifts prepared for everybody. Specifically, I'm an artist. I drew my friends and I wrote them handwritten cards and everything. I generally do that for anybody who's graduating. I started in junior year of high school, making these cards where I did a portrait of my closest friends who were graduating and wrote them a letter in a card, and I put the portrait in the card. I started doing that junior year of high school, did that in senior year as well. I also did that during college, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. But I did that for senior year of high school, and there were a lot of other events like prom and graduation and all that. To be honest, I'm not really one for the big events where I have to sit for a while without music in my ears. I get a little overwhelmed when there's a lot of people around for a long duration of time, and generally I don't mind it when during the event as much as I mind it after. I feel like there's been I've been so drained. Definitely an introvert kind of an experience from what I hear. So I don't mind the missing the big events as much as I miss the small events. Oh, my cat's moving, by the way, so he might make a little bit of noise. Okay, he wasn't as loud as I thought he was going to be, actually. Oh, he shook his head. But yeah. So yeah, I was kind of preparing for the end of the year and everything, and I didn't really get to say goodbye to my friends in the way I wanted to, and I know that's the least of all the problems. Oh, he's gonna leave the room, so he's gonna make noise. Okay, yeah, so I didn't get to say goodbye to my friends the way I wanted to back in senior year of high school, and I know that was the least of everybody's problems back in spring of 2020. But regardless, it still did have an effect on me. And a lot of those friends now who I didn't really get to say goodbye to, they're kind of scattered to the winds, and I see them on social media, but we're not really connected so much anymore as we used to. Unfortunately, I'm still connected with, I'd say, like 4 people of my friends, and 2 of them are in Houston now. I think they were both gone for about the same amount of time I was gone, because they were in college at the same time as me, so they weren't in Houston when I was. One of them was in Lubbock, Texas. Texas Tech fans, she went there. And I got to visit her a couple of times when I was traveling around during my time while I was, going to school at Reed in Portland. But I get to see her now a lot more, now that we're both back in Houston. And there's another person who is in Houston now too, and she went to school somewhere in Texas. I'm sorry, I don't remember the school. But she went to school and now she's back in Houston. And so that's really cool. And I also like that all 3 of us are going into like artistic-y fields, because the Texas Tech person, there's a really good vocal department there, or music department there specifically, or more generally, I guess. And so she's gonna be a voice choir director. That's it. I forgot the word choir for a second. And then my other friend, she's going into hopefully being a stage director, if I remember right. She's more on the drama theater side, and I hope to I hope my job one day is to be completely like indie publishing, and by extension doing stuff like this, like ASMR videos, and making fun merch designs, and reading a lot. So if I get to talk about the reading, that's even better. It's kind of like a goofy, informal book report. Yeah. So, well, you also get to learn a lot about me through my rambling. But yeah, I was just gonna mention the other 2 as well. The 4 friends who I kept in contact from Houston. One of them is in Pakistan right now. He's studying to be a doctor, which is just kind of funny in comparison to, like, I'm hoping to be a writer, but I went to school for studio art, and then my friend, vocal, music student, choir director, and then like drama, and then just doctor. But yeah, he's really driven. I know he'll do it, even though, or I know he'll make it, even though it's definitely hard, and I can see from the outside and sense that it's really hard, even though we're 10 hours away from each other. So I don't literally see it unless we FaceTime, but it's, yeah. And then my best friend, he's up in Washington, D.C. right now. He's studying for his master's, and I'm gonna be like, you can't ask me what his master's is in, actually, because I'm not sure if he's told me. We have a bit of a goofy best friendship, to where some random things I just kind of don't know about him. Like if somebody asks me, oh, what did he go to school for? I think he got a degree in geography, but I don't actually know what specifically he wants to do. So, yeah. But now that he's out of town, we kind of inverted our experiences. He was in Houston studying here at college while I went to Portland, and now that I am back in Houston, he is now in somewhere else in DC. But yeah, when we visit, when our paths cross in Houston, we go on walks and everything, because like I mentioned earlier, we actually didn't become friends. We were friends before that. We were elementary school friends back in 4th grade. 4th and 5th grade we were friends, and then we went to different middle schools, and then back in high school we reconnected and went on walks together, specifically like after school. We would walk home, and we just kind of continued that practice of like going on walks in the neighborhood during college when our paths would cross. And yeah, so those are my Houston friends, and they are kind of partially scattered to the winds, partially maybe not. And my family is here, specifically like my close family, like my parents and my brother. Yeah, and then my Portland friends are the ones I met at Reed are completely scattered to the winds. Well, I say completely, I'm not sure any of them are out of the country exactly, even though some of them are from out of the country. But I think most of them are either in grad school or got jobs in various places. There's somebody in Wisconsin, there's somebody else in Texas, there's a few still in Portland, there's a few on the East Coast. I'm not sure if anybody went back to California, even though I think there are some of us who were from California. Yeah, so we kind of scattered all over the United States, I think. Which I mentioned friend group. I mean, like there was 14 of us, I think, and we got together for game nights and for watching movies. Specifically, we bonded initially over Lord of the Rings. It was great. We had a great group, and now we have we have a Discord, and we talk on there, and we also have reunions online where we connect with each other there. But there's definitely this sort of displacement idea in my head of like I'm connected the most to the people who I made memories with in both cities of Houston and Portland. But I sort of have mixed feelings on the cities themselves of like, which one do I really say? Or how do I act and behave in the two different cities? Because particularly when I was crossing between them, I didn't know how much of my Portland self I should bring to Houston environment, or how much of my Houston self I should bring to the Portland environment. Especially because in Portland, being a Texan in Portland is a little weird. I mean, most people don't really care, but like I kind of was sort of noticing, okay, how much do I change how I speak a little bit? Because most of the time I don't think most people notice any sort of Texan accent in me, because it's pretty neutral American, or at least I've been told my voice is neutral American in terms of accent, but every so often there's a little bit of just a random drawl that kind of comes in there every so often, and so I'm like, do I watch for that in Portland? And then when I'm in Houston, like, do I dress less Portland? Because in Portland they don't care how you dress. You can dress however you want, especially at Reed College. You want to dress in really, really colorful clothing, like, sure, go ahead. You want to dress in such a way that makes people question whether you're, like, cis. Yeah, go right ahead, go do it. But in Houston, it's very much, I don't know how much, I mean, it's specifically, like, how queer do you want to dress is kind of I keep thinking about, and I think ultimately I've landed on, most people see me as, like, they see me and they think I'm a woman anyway, so, and not non-binary, so it actually doesn't really matter how I dress. Their perception of me is not going to change around here. So, like, even with my, alright, I'll say it. Even with my hair, I think you know this is a wig, but it's, yeah, I don't wear this out all the time. I wear this just when I'm trying to clarify that I am G, the alter G, but I don't wear this out and about. But I will say that my natural hair is also asymmetrical, so, I won't describe in detail about it, but it's, yeah, I don't know if that necessarily makes me look more queer or not to most people around here, but even with that, I don't think anybody's ever expressed in any certain way any indication that I am not, that they don't perceive me as a woman, you know, so I learned to embrace the Portlandy, colorful clothing, wear what you want kind of vibe in Houston. And I think I pretty much just stopped thinking about my, how my voice might sound anywhere remotely near Texan. I stopped thinking about that in Portland, so eventually I sort of figured out how I wanted to balance myself between the two places, or the two versions of me, I guess. And this book, yes, this does have I am sort of talking about this book. This book very much covers that quite a bit, that feeling of balancing yourself between two different places. It resonated with me so much, and you can tell because I talked so much about the differences of my personal experience with the two different places that I grew familiar with over the past 4 years. And now I don't have a reason to go back to Portland right now. When hopefully if I get enough income, I do want to visit Reed more often because my thesis is there, for one thing. I'm sorry, that is the first thing I thought of because my thesis is right over there, I can see it. That's not the primary reason I want to return to Reed, though, to clarify. I do actually want to see the people there and to, like, do some of the fun Reed College alumni things. That's the plural, there we go. Alumni things. And also just see Portland again and some of my favorite places. But yes, I also do want to see my thesis. It's printed out 3 times there, which is 1 more time than the usual amount of time that it's printed. It's also pretty big. It's apparently the biggest art thesis that they've seen. Can you tell I'm a writer? Anyway, well, I'm an overwriter, I should clarify. There are plenty of different types of writers. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know, it might be in the admission office right now. I don't know where they keep these plural of thesis. I don't know where they keep those in admission. But theoretically, the office has my copy, as well as, of course, the thesis tower. And, of course, the archives. Because everybody gets a copy of their thesis put in the thesis tower and the thesis archives. And if you work at the admission office, then you can also give one of your copies to them. And then there's 2 copies here, one for my parents and one for myself, so there are 5 printed copies of my thesis in existence. And yeah, so I do want to see that because I have yet to see it at Reed, and it's kind of one of the big fun things of, I mean, your whole experience of being a senior at Reed College is you write a thesis that is pretty much most of your time is writing the thesis and doing the research or whatever it is you need to do for it. For me, it was building a room to put in, not building a room, Thesis Tower so much and seen all of the history of just so many people who have passed before you with all of their work up there, and then seeing yours among it. I feel like that would be such an experience, especially because that is technically my first published work. It is not under GM Baugh, not under that name, but it's still our first officially, like, a thing that was printed, bound, and put as part of a collection in a library kind of a thing. I hope it's the first of many, but yeah, I hope to return to Portland, but I don't have much reason to right now, especially because I don't really have a stable income yet. So hopefully when I get to the point of being more stable in my life, I'll be able to like travel there a few more times and experience Portland again. For right now, though, I am me in Houston, and I have been changed quite a bit by my experiences in Portland and at Reed College, around the people that I got to know. So yeah, this book, if you have had that sort of experience of going between two places, especially two cities, two places that are just so distinctly different, like that, then yeah, I recommend this book and these types of books too, where they definitely talk about identity in relation to place and culture in those places. It's, yeah. Because, yeah, I think that is the thing that probably spoke to me the most. At least as I'm thinking about it after the fact. Yeah. Alright. I wonder, should I do any more book sounds? The only ones I can really think of are like page flipping and page turning. This one being page flipping, but turning being more the this kind of vibe. Read like, hear the page. Experience with it. And I wonder, I'd like to ask you, have you read this? If not, do you? I don't know what stood out to you as like an aspect of this book, or do you relate to maybe to any of my experiences in relation to the book? And that's okay also if you've fallen asleep or you just don't feel like answering. That's perfectly fine. This is a safe space. You can just pass through. Just be like, yep, I sort of listened to that. Although I don't remember anything you said. And that's fine. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you so much. So very, very, very much. So thank you again. Go ahead and set this down. Thank you again for stopping by and for listening. You're a very good listener. Just in case somebody hasn't told you that, you very much are. You're listening to this right now, aren't you? And yes, that includes if you've fallen asleep or if you're half awake or anything. I don't know what it is you want or need this video for, but I hope that